this element.
So an example of how toxic masculinity relates to mass shooting. If you look at Elliot Rodger, which everyone kind of knows about, right? Elliot Rodger felt entitled to affection and attention from women. That is born out of a toxic aspect of masculinity, and so he took it upon himself to punish people for the fact that he wasn't getting what he felt entitled. So in that particular case, you could argue that toxic masculinity had quite a big effect, and in fact was much of a reason why the thing happened. Now you can go ahead and assess. I mean, we don't know a lot about this dude. We kind of do. A lot of people are blaming mental illness, and a lot of people are blaming this and the other thing. But surely you can look at the thing and see that an aspect of it, and something that connects a lot of the mass shootings, is in fact toxic aspects of masculinity.
Yeah, men who are taught essentially that the only way to address their emotions is through violence. And you can sort of see a bit of an intersectionality between that and also race as well, like the idea that white men are sort of being suppressed by the system and stuff, and they have to take their anger out on to groups who aren't white men, like women, like ethnicities, like we saw in with the ideas behind what the shooter was, sort of thinking. Like if you look at the group chats he's in, he says some pretty horrific stuff about black people, about Mexicans, about LGBT.
Which is hilarious because he's Mexican himself.
Well, he's got a Spanish surname, but that's quite common in
No.
America.
His Spanish surname is from his father. He, even though he was adopted, he kept his father's name. Yeah, and the whole white nationalist thing that he. Pardon?
What's the Mexicanness got to do with?
Well, his name is Nicolas de Jesus Cruz.
Okay,
he was adopted. He was adopted by a white family. But when I think it was Time that came out with the article said that he was working with white supremacists or whatever, or no, it was the AP that pushed that. Basically, they got trolled by 4chan. So journalists do your due diligence, actually verify things. Don't find people who are just out looking for publicity, be it good, bad, or indifferent. So the AP and a lot of news organizations got egg on their face. Now today's narrative is the NRA taught this child how to kill people, do mass murders. Well, no, the NRA gave a $10,000 grant to the JROTC group that he belonged to at the school prior to him being kicked out, expelled from that school. In fact, one of his people on that same rifle team that received some of that money from that grant given to the JROTC basically died trying to protect one of their classmates. So really the whole NRA thing is a non sequitur too. It's just a series of really bad
I think
narratives.
the NRA is necessarily a non sequitur thing. They have a huge influence over the policies that go into
exactly.
guns and
But
things
to
in
say
America.
that they specifically
No,
funded
I'm not
his
saying that
training is where I'm
necessarily is
saying.
Yeah,
We were
that's
talking about,
fine, but we don't necessarily need to talk about that. We can talk about the NRA's overall influence on gun violence in America, and I think that it's definitely something that needs to be talked about because I don't know, this happens again and again and again. Like people saying, what 28 to 30, I don't know, somewhere between 25 and 30 mass shootings or gun-related thingamajiggies happened in America since the beginning of this year.
Okay, there was a report that came out that said that there's been 18 school shootings that's happened since January 1st of 2018. There has been 18 incidences with firearms at school shootings. What people do not know is a lot of these weren't really like, attacks on the school or anything. One was a stray bullet shot off campus, away from campus.
Why
no,
does
that
matter?
actually does matter. That actually does matter.
It's the guns being fired in the vicinity of people. That's bad.
Yeah. Can I jump in here?
Yeah, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to. I think we need to start listening to the kids because those are the voices I've been hearing. Those are the voices I've been trying to amplify on social media and stuff. Are the kids who are saying this is bullshit. It's ridiculous that we can't even. One of the best things I saw was some teenager calling out Trump on Twitter, just being like, we don't need your thoughts and prayers, we need action, and so this doesn't happen again.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's all fine and dandy. There's nothing wrong with listening to victims. I've been around shootings. Okay, I've been in combat. Yeah. I understand the stresses involved with it. I'm sorry, I'm not going to take any suggestions from some child wwho doesn't really understand the Constitution. So what do you understand?
When
I'd just like to know what you'd suggest that could help.
Honestly,
reduce mass shootings and gun violence in America.
Honestly,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, in general. Very, very quickly, I don't believe that there should be a gun-free zone. I believe that places like educational institutions and stuff, hear me out before everyone starts, going crazy on me, is you allow teachers to get level 3 cleat certification. That is the same certification that you see with armed security guards. It doesn't take away from their job. It's just in case of an emergency, hey, they are concealed carry and they can actually fire back. The biggest problem that you see with mass shootings and stuff is police response times. If you have a good guy with a gun, these instances.
Good guys with a gun don't stop bad guys with guns. I'm sorry, that's just.
We don't need these. We don't need these empty platitudes. We need action.
Well, that is action.
Yesterday.
But it's now is not an action. The whole idea of trying to take away the Constitution that the United States was built on is not an action. That's actually tyranny.
No, stop. It's not about tyranny. It's not about my own position on gun control and arms is complicated. I'm not all like, let's get rid of all the guns ever and like let's not allow guns for self-defense. I'm not in that camp at all.
Well, and that's fine, but I'm talking about common sense things. Some people are like,
can I respond to good guy versus bad guy with guns thing, please, first before we move on? Okay.
Can we hear from is it okay if we hear from Ted as well? Because I think he's saying something.
Was he trying to? Sorry, I totally missed that. Do you want to talk, Ted? Go
for it. I just wanted to say, why could anyone justify having firearms in schools?
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I was about to add on that is the whole having like a good guy does not stop a bad guy with a gun. And the example that I was going to give is Chris Kyle, the American sniper guy. Him and a friend were driving another friend to a driving range because he had PTSD and they wanted to try and help with PTSD. And they were both shot and killed, even though they both had guns and they were trained military men with guns. If those two guys can't stop a bad guy with guns, I mean, introducing more guns to the situation doesn't stop it.
I think that's part of the problem with this mass shooting anyway, and part of the gun culture. And I don't know if like adding more guns to the situation would dissuade the gun culture problem that we have in America. That's one of the facets that I think we as a country just has to combat and confront and acknowledge that we have a gun culture problem.
Just quickly before everyone starts, just quickly. Seeing as we all want to sort of say stuff, I think I'm going to like write down the order everyone wants to like say things in, so that we're not all like cutting each other off and stuff. So I'll jot down who wants to. So does anyone have anything to say like right now? And I'll like write down.
Yeah, can I say a couple things?
So we'll go aircraft, Sparky. Then who after Sparky?
Piper, I think, wants to say something.
Piper, Ashley, wants to say, I think.
No, I don't have anything else to say about this topic.
Okay, so it's just Sparky and Piper then, yeah?
I'll say more things.
Oh, and
I might have a few words, but I don't have much to say.
Okay, so Sparky, Piper, Mike, and Chris, and then I'd like to say something at some point as well. And then we'll move on. So, Sparky, take it away.
Okay, well, see, here's the problem that I have. I don't agree with gun-free zones because gun-free zones just make a soft target. as prior military, as a vet, who's someone who's been in combat zones, I know that areas that are declared gun-free, that are sans weapons, sans defense, they're nothing but a soft target looking to be shot at. Most of these people who do these quote-unquote mass shootings are themselves cowards and are honestly looking to inflict as much damage until the police respond and eventually take them out. Yes, they may know that they are going to die doing the deal, but they also have that slight glimmer of hope that they're going to be able to leave prior to the time police respond. Average response time of police in the United States of America is 11 minutes. Considering that the police are a reactionary force and we do not want to take them beyond that, we do not want them as a preventative force. We want them to be a reactionary force. That way they don't infringe on the liberties of the American citizen. That you would want to take away the soft target. So what you would do is you would allow teachers to volunteer for a program for level 3 cleat certification where they can carry a gun and defend their students if the problem arises. Now, it's not saying, oh, more guns is the answer. No, I'm talking about proper training, maybe a little bit more money for those teachers and stuff, but also a means to defend the students. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and you don't have to hire more people, thus creating more positions for benefits that need to be filled, costing the state even more money. So you just raise the pay of these teachers up who volunteer for this because they're taking on an additional duty. And, you know, it may not solve the problem, but it would be at least a deterrent because people don't go in shooting up police stations because they know that it's a non-starter. They're going to end, and they're going to end quick. You know, and that's not what they want. So if you make it to where there's deterrence, because that's really what guns are really good at, is to be used as a tool for deterrence. If someone steps into my house, people know everywhere that I move, I have guns. And people do not break into my house because they have seen those guns, and that is a deterrent. I really hope I never have to use my weapon in defense of my family, you know, or any other person. I've had to do it in war, and it's not a fun thing. But all at the same time, deterrence. What keeps honest people honest? Okay, think about this for a moment. You have locks on your door. That lock doesn't really stop a criminal. Your windows don't stop a criminal. That stops honest people. So if you really believe that taking away guns from everyone is the answer, then I have this challenge to you. Leave your windows open and your door open at all times, even when you leave the house. Put a little note on front stating, hey, please don't rob me. Thanks. Have a nice day, and see how long your stuff exists or if your family is safe under those conditions. Honestly, there are some shit people in this world. Not all of them. Hashtag there's a lot of great people in this world, but there's also a lot of shit people. And it's deterrence for the shit people is what we need. My opinion.
Okay, so I believe it was Piper after Sparky. And if you want to say stuff in relation to that.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Piper, we can hear you. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So there are a few things that I wanted to say because there's kind of a lot to address in that. Now I do want to say off the bat that I am not for gun control. I don't, even when people, pitch the idea of quote unquote common sense background checks, I have arguments against that. I don't necessarily agree with that. So I will say that, but I'm also not of the mind that simply giving a bunch of good guys guns is going to stop the quote unquote bad guys. And that's because, it's not like statistically that doesn't work. So when people have guns and something like a mass shooting happens, then and they have the opportunity to take the person who's doing the mass shooting out. A lot of the time they don't do it because they're scared and they don't know what to do in that situation. Even if they have the training or whatever, it's that is a stressful situation where anybody is going to be hard pressed to step up and be the hero and take out the mass shooter. Now, generally, the solution of giving more people guns doesn't address the issue. The issue isn't that we don't have enough guns. The United States has the most guns per capita of any country, right?
They do.
So we have plenty of guns, right? And the guns that we have, I would add, are not going anywhere despite whatever legislation people call for. So the issue is not that we don't have enough guns in people's hands. The issue is something like violence in society is directly correlated generally with the level of social inequality, be it economic or in political power. And we are a very unequal society in the United States.
Hey, Ashley, we can
We always hear the
typing.
statistics about...
Sorry.
We always hear the
No problem.
statistics about 1% of the people owning the lion's share of all wealth, and so on and so forth, more than the bottom, more than the bottom 40% put together, statistics like that. And there's also the fact that in political power terms, there is pretty much no equality either, because the policies that, so the government policy and how the government acts, those things are not dictated by, the mass of people. They're dictated by specific moneyed interests that have a lot of wealth that they can throw at buying candidates and buying policy. So I think that's where you have to look to actually address the issue of gun violence and violence in society in general. And, sorry if I'm being a little bit long-winded, but I do want to say one thing before I stop. And when the issue of, asking what the kids think, the people who are actually victims of these mass shootings, and I would include the teachers in that and the school faculty, because they are also victims, right? So when that was brought up, I'm not sure, aircraft base.
That was me.
Oh, aircraft Sparky. There you go. Sorry.
Yes. Just call me Sparky. It's fine.
Okay, Sparky. So you said, "Oh, well, I'm a military veteran. I do not need to take into account the opinions of a bunch of children." Well,
yes, and
I'm sorry.
Can I respond real quick to that? Okay, I'm not trying to be mean.
Sparky, actually make my point.
Mike, you go ahead. You go ahead, Mike. You can respond in a second, Sparky.
Yeah. So, anyway, the point that I was trying to make.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the point that I just wanted to make quickly about that is, I'm sorry, but those are the people who are getting, shot and killed. So I think you do have to listen to the opinions of a bunch of children. I'm done now.
Take it away, Mike.
Hi. Okay, so I have a lot of opinions about all this. First of all, the whole good guy. I've already kind of said it. Good guy with a gun beats a bad guy with a gun. No, that's just a platitude that I don't see any substantial evidence for. So I think that's kind of stupid. I'm sorry if I don't mean to say that about anyone, but I think that's a stupid sentiment. Giving guns to teachers, again, it's the good guys with guns thing. I think that's stupid. Why would you? You say about training and stuff, but like I said before, the training doesn't necessarily do that. And then again, you're introducing guns to a classroom. So what happens when a teacher accidentally shoots a student? There's all these complications that go along with that.
Mike, your audio.
We can't hear you, Michael. Yeah, I don't know. We can't hear you.
Yeah, Mike, your audio cut out for some reason.
You dropped out, buddy.
Oh, no.
No.
Hello.
There you go.
Brilliant. Right.
Hello. Hi. Hello.
You're back. You're back.
I can hear you now.
Keep going.
Did you hear any of that, or did I just?
You heard up to the point where you said a teacher will accidentally shoot a student, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So that thing. The gun-free zones being a target for stuff. New Zealand and Australia are both gun-free.
and we don't have any mass shootings. And I know people say like, oh, well, they're different countries, such and such. I'm not saying, my opinion isn't that we should get rid of all the guns or that you should get rid of all the guns. To begin with, I think that there needs to be some common sense regulations, though, because currently it's just like, nope, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to solve any problems. We're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. I think there needs to be some common sense regulation. The whole idea that going against the Constitution is going against the God-given right of the American people, I think that's stupid as well. There are amendments in the Constitution. The Constitution can be amended because it's been 200 years since the Constitution was written. Guns have changed. The gun laws need to change. And the other thing that I was going to say was guns as deterrence. Again, I live in a house. We don't have any guns. Other people don't have guns. There are people in New Zealand who have guns, but there are regulations. You have to have a gun cabinet. You have to have a license. You can't have assault rifles. You just have like, your hunting rifle. So you can go out, go hunting. You can kill animals if that's your thing, but no one goes around. Like, I can't think of a time when anyone's been shot in New Zealand ever. And since the hardcore gun regulation was introduced in Australia after the Port Douglas mass shooting, no mass shootings, zero. So I mean, gun control works. You can introduce certain things to deter gun violence, and adding more guns and adding more people with guns and things to the situation just makes it worse. Anyway, I needed to ramble. I need to go. I'm sorry. It was nice talking to you, Mr. Aircraft. That was all I needed to kind of say, but I've got to go and take my cat to the vet. So.
No problem.
All right, take care, my cat.
Bye, Michael.
See you later, team.
Adios.
Nice meeting you.
Right, so after Mike, we had American Anarchist. So take it away, Anarchist.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to bring up that much like Piper being a leftist, I'm not really in favor of like gun control, especially historically in America. It has really only ever targeted people who are more likely to be the victims of said gun violence. So, but I tend to be very skeptical of the idea that, honestly, a lot of what I was thinking was kind of covered by Piper, and I assumed that this would happen. But, I'm very skeptical of the idea that just introducing more guns or introducing more trained people with guns will help in the long run. And I think that there are some underlying problems not really related to the guns themselves. Like, I don't think taking away the guns is going to deal with the root problem either. I think that the root problems have to do with stuff like, social alienation and, I feel that we teach a lot of people, teaching people that they might be more like entitled to specific things socially, and then they come into the real world and they realize that that isn't actually the case, and also, like I said, social alienation, I think, is really a big deal, and that's something that we definitely need to learn how to, we as a society need to basically, I think that we as a society need to learn how to, treat people better, and, teach better, basically teach people some more,
empathy?
I'm trying to think of the word for it, but, just, I think that it's more of a radical change in society. I think this coincides with stuff like capitalism and stuff like,
yeah.
I think that radical change in the system is what needs to happen, and it's not even really related to the guns, but more, but I think it's much more of a social problem. I think that's what's really the root of these mass shootings.
Yeah,
and see, I'll agree with you. I will so agree with you right there.
You can say your piece in a second. Just it's next. It's some random geek. So it's getting for everyone.
No problem. So there's one thing I haven't brought up. I don't think has been brought up. Okay, the libertarian idea of just give more people guns and properly train them and something like that in case of a mass shooting. Okay, but the problem is that if you got a bad guy with a gun starts shooting someone, and then you have a good guy with a gun start shooting at that guy, or other good guys thinking I'll be the good guy start shooting the gun, then you got the problems like who do know where the logistical problem of who shot what at what time, where the bullets hit, and there also the potential of collateral damage of trying to be a hero with be the good guy with the gun. So that's why I have a problem with that idea of like give more people guns or give her the gun-free zone and stuff like that. And I have my complicated views on guns. In my opinion, it would be great if like we can get rid of guns, but I know that that's unrealistic in this country. Unfortunately, it's the reality of the world that people have guns and people feel entitled to have the guns and stuff like that. Okay, and there's definitely arguments that for people who are marginalized do or feel more disempowered that the guns good safety for them. And yeah, so I'm not going to be advocating for get rid of all guns, but at least like some legislation against AR-15s. Why do we need? You don't need a semi-automatic rifle to do hunting. People can hunt. I have no problem with that. So people can have hunting rifles and stuff like that. But AR-15s, I don't see the point of that and stuff like that. So yeah, and yeah, mental illness is not the subject either. And if people are serious about the mental illness, it should be free and available to anyone in this country and easily be accessible for anyone. So that if mental health problems is the problem, I'm not saying it is, if that is the problem, then people can easily get mental health resources to possibly help in that regard. So that's some of my things, and I'll let the next person go.
Okay. So just quickly, Ted, Wolf, or Ashley, if you want to respond before I say something, because you didn't say initially that you wanted to say anything, but I just want to check to make sure.
Yeah, Ted.
My bit's totally quick. Am I gonna get on screen?
You're on screen now.
Yeah.
I wasn't on my screen, but I'll just go anyway. But the more guns argument, the other trouble is the more guns there are, the more psychological pressure everyone's under. Like, even the good guys in inverted commas, something's gonna go wrong. People are gonna make a mistake when there's too many guns involved. So I think that's another reason why the good guys should have guns argument falls flat.
Yeah, I agree.
No, exactly. And Wolf, you were going to say something as well?
Yeah, I agree with what Rose said. There's a big issue when it comes to alienation, and some people are bringing out mental illness. And it's it is a thing that's a problem that's on Twitter when we bring it up, because that's very alien to people with the regular type of diseases like depression, anxiety, all those type of things. Like you could stretch it if it was something to do with someone with there could be a particular extreme personality disorder, like sociopathic type pathology. I mean, maybe that's like somewhere along the lines, but it's just I think we go down a rabbit hole a little bit if we go down one thing, because there's a lot of different skills. I mean, some people bring up toxic masculinity, and there could be something because that's to do with the socialization and some of the things, and that's sort of unprisoned. But then I guess we've got to look at it through multiple prisons, and the more that we have, and the more we can kind of illuminate the problem.
Yeah, no, I agree, certainly. And Ashley, did you want to say anything before I say my sort of response?
I just wanted to say on the issue of mental health. Mental health. It may have some connection to these mass shootings. It may not. But I do want to point out that I think the mental health argument is connected, at least tangentially, to the concept of toxic masculinity, because as was part of my exchange with Mr. Elam, as I kind of explained in that exchange, part of toxic masculinity is teaching men and boys to keep it in, keep their emotions, bottle their emotions, and not express them freely and healthily. And speaking as a person, well, obviously not a man, but a person who has depression and has suffered from anxiety and suicidal ideation, even recently, I can say from experience that bottling your emotions doesn't help. It only makes it worse. Not expressing it makes it worse. And statistically, I've found that men are less likely to seek therapy and counseling if they need it, or like medication or even diagnosis. So that's definitely worth discussing. And again, I'm not for gun control, and I do see the things that American Anarchist was talking about how gun control has mostly been used to keep guns out of the hands of people in marginalized groups who are more likely to be victims of violent crime. In fact, I've on my public Facebook page, I've shared stories of LGBTQ plus gun rights groups. So, like, I'm not anti-gun totally, but I do think these are I believe LonelyWolf said this. I agree that we should be listening to. I'm going to reiterate: we should be listening to the kids because they're the victims. They were there. They saw friends of theirs and teachers of theirs die. So yes, you don't just say you're a kid. Who cares what you think? It's like because they matter.
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley. And now I get to say my bit after all of you have gone. Right. So fundamentally, I think that with the ideas about guns, we need to be addressing more than just the guns themselves, but the culture that they exist in. So, like Anarchist and Piper said, and Ashley and Wolf touched on, you need to be looking at the fact that we live in a society.
Just gonna say, Owen, you can call me Rose.
Oh,
in fact, Troy already has.
Okay, then. Yeah, well, like Rose and Piper.
Sorry.
Yeah, so like Rose and Piper were saying, we live in a society, or in America, they have a society that has deep systemic problems. So, like they said, if you just put a gun control law in, like that's not going to address the people who are largely doing these shootings, but rather be an excuse for the police to go into predominantly black communities and really ramp up the oppression on them. It's going to be an excuse for the police to crack down on targeted individuals to, continue the systemic oppression of the state onto the people, in the name of capitalism and stuff. So, you need to be observing the societal factors that contribute to the problems, like toxic masculinity, as you mentioned, Ashley, and like the problems with regulation that we're seeing, where it's not really doing a very good job of making things better. But with that, you obviously got to analyze that guns themselves, just adding more of them, isn't really a very good idea, because like Ted was saying, the idea that you can just throw in, all this training and all these extra guns and firearms into places isn't going to help anything. What if someone makes a mistake due to the added pressure of there being guns everywhere? What if something goes wrong? And that goes on wrong all the time. I'm sure we've all seen videos of accidental shootings and stuff. Like, I remember a pretty horrific one of a young girl fully firing a automated weapon into their gun instructor. If that happens in a controlled environment, like a gun range, then what do you think is going to happen in an environment with loads of children who, many of whom, they're wild, crazy things, like young kids. It takes lots of people don't understand how much effort goes into teaching a class full of children. It's hard enough getting them to sit down and concentrate. Imagine having a gun. Some kids, they'll be throwing pens around and being a nuisance with anything they can get their hands on. Imagine if one busy morning a gun's just left out, or it's left in a place that can be accessed by the kids, and that's going to happen at some point, because teachers they're not always going to be 100% on the ball. so to take isolated incidents and say, yeah, we need to do X, Y, Z without thinking about the wider societal context is futile, in my opinion, because we need to really understand that in our capitalist society, there's more problems than just one select field. And we can't understand the problems with gun culture in America without understanding the problems of capitalism on top of that and with masculinity on top of that. So, yeah, to conclude, I think Piper and Rose had it right by saying that we need to, rather than saying, yeah, we need gun control, we need to be saying we need to address the core problems with American society and with society at large, which is, in my and many others' opinion, capitalism. And the way we sort of engage ourselves within this system and how it manifests in atrocities like mass shootings. And I will let Sparky finally get to reply to the like 8 or so people who've said stuff to him now.
Okay. And sorry if I accidentally broke into anyone. First of all, American Anarchist Rose touched on something that actually is one of my big talking points. It's cultural. It is more of a cultural issue than it is truly a gun issue. What is acceptable today versus what was acceptable 20, 30 years ago have completely changed. I remember when I was going to school, we had a couple drive-bys, and after a while, people actually thought that it was okay. It was actually glorified by the media and such. So we're really looking at the breakdown of the Western culture as I see it. You see people glorifying these acts of violence when it doesn't really need to be. The mental health issue is actually something I am concerned with because mental health is on the decline of mental health is on the rise in the Western world. I don't know if I could blame capitalism. I don't really understand the tie between capitalism and mental health and all this other stuff. But hey, I'm sure I'll get to hear more of that down the road. Here is a hard fact: 11.6 people per 100,000 are killed in America by cars in auto accidents, where only 4.8 per 100,000 people are killed by guns. It is amazing that if a suicide bomber blows himself up in a crowded field, we blame the bomber and not the bomb. If a drunk driver plows through people, we blame the driver and not the car. Yet if someone pulls a trigger on a gun, for some reason, people want to blame an inanimate object. It makes no sense. Ted, I do agree with you, my man. The problem with more guns is that there is a chance for more confusion. Addressing the deal about training. When it comes to training, how do you think the military actually does all their maneuvers? They train until it becomes second nature. People who are in armed professions, that's what they do in their free time just for fun because they don't want to make those mistakes. So, I mean, it would take an actual effort by the teachers if they were, to become concealed carry, class 3, cleat certified, which class 3 certification means that they would be able to conceal carry as well as carry non-lethal weapons such as tasers and stuff. Not everything has to be responded to with a bullet. And the reason why I say that I don't want to allow children to set policy, okay, I have no problem listening to them and their concerns, but however, children don't understand enough about the law to really enact policy decisions. It's nothing against their experiences, but if they don't even have the basic knowledge to comprehend why some of these ideas won't work, really you can't take their ideas that seriously. It's a basic knowledge. It's a knowledge gap is really all it is. It's nothing against them. It's just they don't have the life experiences. I have been in combat. I've seen the chaos of war, and it is scary. But with proper training, you can get through it. It is not just guns that mass killings happen with. Saturday in China, 33 was killed by a knifeman. One guy, one knife, lots dead. So really, with proper training, almost anything can be extremely deadly to many people at the same time. I'm not sitting there going, oh, well, they're the same, because they're not. Let's be honest. This kid was trained on how to use the weapon. I have no problem with that. I believe that children should be taught on proper, safe use of firearms. But this person took that knowledge and bastardized it by pulling the fire alarm inside of a school, forcing people to leave a school, which gave him a nice kill window, and he shot people. This person, I believe, does have some mental deficiencies, although there's really no record that has been 100% proven. Still waiting on the police records. Yes, there is a problem in America. I believe it's mostly cultural. I believe that many people here will agree that there is a cultural problem in America. I would actually say that it's kind of an umbrella thing going on in the West. Is it capitalism? I'll argue no, but I think it's more of a lack of standards on the populace itself. Thank you.
No problem, Sparky. So we come to that time again when we need to decide an order for who's going to go when. So I suggest we go in reverse order this time, so that maybe Ashley, Wolf, or Ted wants to go first, and then we work our way down in order there. So who would like to go first out of you three, if anyone?
Well, if no one's picking it up, I'd like to say something.
Okay, so firstly, you, Geek, then after Geek, who would like to go?
I'll go second.
All I'm going to say is that I've
Brilliant.
said my piece on this issue, so
Okay. We'll
until we
come to you on a
change
different-
issue, yeah.
Brilliant, Rose. All right, so that leaves Wolf, Ashley, Piper, and I'll go last again because I feel as though, as the sort of host, I shouldn't really be talking over everyone else.
I really don't have anything else to say on this issue. I said what I needed to.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ashley. So now it's just Wolf and Piper. You two the same as.
Yep. Mine will be short and sweet.
Sorry, Wolf?
I guess I have something short, but I guess specific to say. So
Okay. So you can go after Ted, Piper, and then Wolf. You want to go fourth, or? Brilliant. All right, and then I'll go after Wolf. Take it away, Geek.
Okay, so yes, it's true that a lot of people do die and get injured by cars, but that's kind of a necessity. We use that more than just like harming people. So that's one point to that. And well, guns, you could use it for protection. So, but I don't know. It's just like I feel like the use of the gun is compared to the use of the car is just not equivalent. So I don't think we can compare to stats of like the harm that's done by cars to the harm that's done by guns. Let's see. Now it is. I do kind of agree. There's a cultural problem, but it's multifaceted, and I think capitalism is part of that because with capitalism, we are living in a dog eat dog world, and we live in that dog eat dog world because of capitalism. We have to like look out for just ourselves and not look out for others, and that's a broad point, but I think that's part of the whole debate and stuff like that. So I'll leave it off of there and let Ted go next.
But I get the analogy that it's exactly the same as being in the war. Soldiers in the war, they're there for combat. That is their one purpose. Where someone in the classroom, they're not meant to kill bodies. That should only be an extraordinary, awful scenario. And they can never be trained for that in the same way a soldier can, if that makes sense.
It does, actually. It does make a lot of sense. Good point, Ted.
Brilliant. Yeah. Piper, you said you had a succinct point.
Yeah. This has to do with the listening to children thing. I don't know necessarily what you mean by children setting policy. I do think that children, since they, do not have the rounded experience that adults have. I mean, obviously everyone thinks that there are things that children should not be allowed to do that adults can do because they are more experienced. They have their brains are developed fuller, etc. Right? So I get that point, but but I will say that that it's not that doesn't mean that children when you're setting policies that specifically affect them, that they should just be they should just passively adhere to those policies, right? I think that's totally wrong. I think as human beings, they have the basic right to have some input into the policies that affect them. And if people want to object with the idea that children are too stupid to have any input, well, I would say that that's not true. That's because, and I would say that that's because there are different models of schooling that, different models of schooling that we don't use in general in, the West or really anywhere else, that are actually based on the input of the children that go to the school, and where they make a lion's share of the decisions, even about, let's say, discipline. That model is called free schooling, or democratic schooling, and that does exist. There's a democratic school in Britain. I don't remember the name of it, but that model actually gives these children a say in the policies of the school, and it runs, it runs just as smoothly as anything else. So I think the idea that, children are, not saying anyone necessarily said this, but children are stupid, therefore they should have no input. I think that's wrong. I think they actually can and should have a great deal of input.
Brilliant. So I believe it was Wolf next.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the topic that comes up sometimes, we hear a lot of terminology comes up on Twitter when we say the word toxic masculinity, and I think it's one of those unfortunate side effects of when there's a certain term that might circulate in academia to describe something that's because we can describe it in everyday language, but unfortunately some things do filter down through the academic and lands into the lap of the general consciousness, and yeah, that's when you look at the actual term itself, it explains some of the sociological aspects of certain ways in which men can suffer, and I can say that. I mean, I don't necessarily identify as a feminist or an MRA. Like I probably fit more in the lines of men's liberation rather than MRA, because I'm sort of opposed to that Paul Elam wing of that. So it's an issue that I probably talked about anyway without even realizing that I was using that word anyway. So it's not a scary term for those people who are like the non-feminists or whatever. It's sort of not too bad. I mean, some people can weaponize the word and use it in the wrong context or something like that. And yeah, that's sort of where I'm coming from, because I still talk a lot to men's issues. That's what I do on my channel a lot of the time, and to sort of include, I guess, trans men issues as well. So that's the advantage in the men's movement. There's more, like, men's liberation is starting to gain more momentum. So like what I've been trying to do with my channel, it's kind of a positive thing. We're seeing that a lot of other men's groups are coming up on Twitter, and yeah, it's sort of a much better model of sort of looking at particular men's issues rather than that Elam wing, because there's a lot of ways that he's screwed over men as well as women.
Yeah. Just a heads up, Wolf, your audio in that last segment there was a little bit tinny or something. I'm not sure what it was.
I was all over the place then when I tried to make a point.
Oh no, the point was fine. It was more the audio. I don't know what it was, but
yeah. So if you see, because I know that MRA like that usually leaves a sour taste, but if you see the usually the word men's liberation or masculinism, those are the two words that it's more along the lines of what I advocate for. So it's a bit more healthier. So it's an alternative to MRA that doesn't necessarily have that kind of grievance that kind of bitterness that comes with the mainstream MRA that kind of, it's unpalatable to me, that ELAM stuff.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Also, Ashley, so sorry about that. So I think you mentioned something about toxic masculinity. So I think I read somewhere that it's not just men who can suffer that, because I know it kind of makes sense that women could suffer the same thing as well, because it's when we mix around their gender roles, etc. Like theoretically, it could affect both men and women, like the same kind of things that men may suffer will happen to women as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, like issues do affect everyone rather than just an individual group. So I believe I come next. I'll try and be quick, because I think we should probably start to move forward from the gun issue, because I get the impression we'll be here all night if we just continue on this topic. We should probably save it for more focused discussions on it and stuff. And certainly, if we want to continue at another point, then we can do that. But anyway, yeah, I'll just try and wrap up. Once again, some pretty good points were made. Ted, you mentioned that the teachers and soldiers have different roles in society, and that's pretty a good place to start. Like the idea of just having people just suddenly take on entire new training courses away from their specialized field to spend time learning how to fire a gun for this potential threat is not only really harmful to both to their profession, like they're diverting time away from doing what they should be doing for help their job, to a subject they shouldn't really have to do in the first place. We want to be in a position where we're saying, how can we stop the problem, rather than saying, how are we going to place a plaster over the problem? Like, we don't want to be sort of addressing the ways we can make teachers stop the attack from being as deadly. We want to be saying, no, we want the attacks to stop. So let's think about how we're going to do that. So it's more, prevention is better than cure. Then you said, Piper, with about kids and stuff, and I think that it's silly to interpret this as, we want kids to literally be making our decisions for the country and stuff. The point that you're making, and which I agree with, is that they have they've got to be considered in the decisions of the nation, because they have autonomy as people. They're human beings. So the fact that people are going into schools and like shooting up the entire place and killing people who are just starting life is abhorrent, and shows fundamental problems in society, especially as it's been going on for decades now. Because there are people who survived Columbine, and now, instead of seeing real change in society, they're instead seeing another generation go through the same stuff and lose people who could have lived amazing lives and lost their right to life because of someone with a gun. And really, I think that, as I was saying earlier, guns themselves, they do have a role in society. They can have a role, but the fact there's so many of them in areas where they shouldn't be, and in scenarios where they're being used to inflict harm onto people, is part of a wider problem. And to come back to what you were saying, Sparker, I believe there is a problem in the West and in the world as a whole. And I think, again, it is capitalism at core, because it's easy to sort of figure it as, the lefties just going against it, but we've got to really think about why there are these problems in society. You mentioned mental health, and you look at the way society is, where workers are forced into selling their labor, or they have no access to the elements of life they need to survive, and then promptly starve. But that's going to make people unhappy. We look at the way we're it's a toxic masculinity. We're taught about men and women, the way society conditions us to view the world, the air of entitlement some men have. And you look at someone like the shooter, and that is resembled in that. And the fact that he gets that impression of society, and he feels that he needs to act in that way, is born of a certain social conditioning. There's always more to every element in society than initially meets the eye. And to suggest that you can just compare one stat to another. So you mentioned deaths per car and deaths per guns. per 100,000 people, I find that to be a little bit almost naive, really, because like Geek said, cars are used more frequently, and again, even that you can apply to capitalist critique, because you could say that, oh well, if there weren't if society was run by everyone, you could have a transport system that benefits everyone rather than just everyone having their own car and doing what they want with it, and thus being forced to sort of go from place, like you look at the work system where you have to sell your labor hours, but you're gonna have to drive to work, so you might be in a rush because you don't want to be late, and promptly you're going to take risks, which leads to deaths. You look at the number of people who get sidetracked in their car, either on the phone or by smoking or by doing anything really, and causing crashes that way. You look at the way cars are built, where lots of developers and producers, they want to build cars as cheaply as possible to maximize profits. So suddenly their cars aren't as safe and are more likely to break down or crash or be unsafe on the road, and thus cause more accidents. There's always more to every single facet of society that we can attribute to the conditions placed upon it. So to draw us back to guns, whilst the gun rate, the gun deaths per 100,000 people may be lower than other things, the fact that stuff as horrific as a load of kids being shot up in a school is happening so frequently in America is something that needs to be discussed, and it's a part of a wider issue with culture in America and under capitalism. And I want to sort of move on from this sort of point, though I feel as though we all have more to say. I don't know if you wanted to say anything briefly, Sparky, but if you could try and keep it relatively concise, I suppose.
Before we end the point, I just want to say one thing. I swear, officer, I was not smoking any weed. You said smoking in the car, so that just immediately came to my head.
Honestly, the only thing that I want to touch on is Geek mentioned how I talked about cars and how cars and guns are basically two different things, not really anything all that comparable. And I counter with this. The only reason why I brought it up is because it's an inanimate object. Okay, there's actually more guns in America than there are vehicles, and yet vehicles attribute to way more deaths per 100,000. And I'm just looking at statistics, and I know that they're not used to kill. But the only reason why I brought up cars was because of they're just a tool. That's all they are. A gun is a piece of machinery. The gun itself has not really evolved much since, honestly, 1950s, 1960s. The only thing that's really upgraded in guns recently has been ammunition. There are some things called smart ammunitions. But that's way too deep to get into. But man, great talk. Thank you for at least giving me the opportunity, not completely calling me an idiot out on this. This seems to be an actually decent conversation. I appreciate that.
Excellent. You sound like you're about to go, Sparky.
Oh no. Just
okay,
honestly, the civility of this honestly kind of surprised me.
Okay.
And I'm just being honest. I'm not putting any. I've done streams with LonelyWolf. I know that I've seen streams between LonelyWolf and RandomGeek. Owen, me and you, we've gone back and forth here and there on Twitter, but we really have never talked to each other. I haven't had the pleasure of being in a room with Ted or American Anarchist, and I'm sorry. I know I'm leaving Piper, and I'm leaving someone else out.
Ted.
Ashley, yes, Ashley. I haven't been in a room I haven't been in a discussion with y'all, and I really appreciate how we've been civil. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
As I said before, you've let yourself down because you haven't ironed your sheets in the background.
But when I throw up the green screen stuff, it looks amazing. So it's non sequitur, bro.
Well, indeed, civility and pleasantness is what I intend, hopefully,